Hey guys, welcome back. We are filming a video today for the Otago Club. We have a special guest here today, my dear friend and master plumber, Cody Beitner. I've known him for a long time. I know his entire family. He's a great person and he also is a great plumber. So today we're going to help you figure out what the world of being a plumber is like, some things that people don't really understand about plumbing that you may want to know, and some really exciting and juicy stories. So, Cody, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good. It's an honor.
Thank you. Thank you. I know, I know sometimes we have trouble keeping things serious, but I think we'll try our best. So tell us about how you became a plumber. What's your history? I just want to know your origin story and how you got into this.
Well, the short version of that story would be I was born into it. I'm a second generation plumber. My dad was a plumber. So I started as a little kid working on job sites with him, whether it's, 10 years old. And then as I got older, working summers, eventually going full time sometime around 2003. And been pretty much plumbing ever since, and that's kind of my background in plumbing.
What other jobs have you had besides plumbing?
Well, I've done typical stuff. I've done McDonald's. I did Les Schwab. But between the plumbing, when I started full-time plumbing and got established in plumbing, I left and went to a water filtration company that did very high-end, mostly commercial applications for water filtration systems in a warehouse. Place called Water Tectonics. It was a great shop. But as the industry kind of changed, plumbers started to become a much higher demand and the wages went way up. And where I was at, the wages weren't going up. So I took off and got back into plumbing and haven't looked back since.
Awesome. So right now, what type of plumbing jobs are you doing?
With the current economy, I've been doing a lot of residential, and then as soon as we have a commercial job, they throw me back on commercial. Our shop tries to keep me mostly on commercial work, but just like today, I was doing a hydraulic heating system on a house and a little resi job, and then I had a little service call. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of everything, but my bread and butter is commercial work. And then if I need to, I just step back and do residential and do service if I need to. But
So I think most people would know like what residential means. It could be fixtures, toilet, crawl space, maybe new plumbing for an addition, whatever it might be. But when you say commercial, can you give us some examples of what that looks like and how being a commercial plumber might help or hurt your residential side?
so that's a good question. I'll tend to use vocabulary that may not necessarily make sense to everybody. Residential, like you said, is houses in general. It could be a new house, it could be a remodel, just houses just in general. And then when houses get over or apartment buildings, for instance, start being considered commercial, or restaurants would be commercial, a Starbucks would be commercial, buildings like that. And then, and then you weren't asking about service, but yeah, service is everything and anything, just little like house call type stuff.
And then how do you think that helps or hurts the residential side of things? Is it just like a good thing to know both, or can plumbers even work on commercial if they want to? Like, maybe explain some of that.
Good point. So as an apprentice, you get hours by working on the job site, which is really nice because you get paid, and as you're getting paid, you learn more. So you start gathering up these, we call them our hours. Now I'm going off the top of my head, so I could be a little wrong, but if I remember correctly, I think it's either 4,000 or 6,000 hours, and then you can get a journeyman card, but it's the lower level of the journeyman. It's called a residential journeyman card. And then you're allowed to do, once you take that test, you're allowed to do houses on your own without having any supervision. Commercial is the higher level, and that's 8,000 hours. And then you take a test, and it's a little different from the residential one. And then you're allowed to do commercial work. So sorry, I just missed a phone call. So there's
Another job for a building.
another job. So there's,
Yeah.
so I guess, what was your question more specifically about that? How does it hurt it or help it?
Yeah. How does that affect the residential? Like, is it, like in my business, I do also residential and commercial, and it's a pretty big leap to go from resi to commercial. But whatever I learn in commercial does help me in the residential side. Is it the same for you, or is it actually counterintuitive?
It's a lot like what you said. When you first get a residential guy and he comes on a job site, they're just kind of starry-eyed looking around like, what are we doing? Because you'll be like, oh, we're running a 2.5-inch water line through here, and then we got a 6-inch waste line running across here. And in residential, you'll see like a 1-inch water main's kind of usually as big as it gets, and sewer lines, you're not going to see anything bigger than a 4-inch. So everything gets bigger, and it can be more intimidating. There's a little bit higher of a standard in commercial work as far as expectation and install quality. And there's a few more codes that apply to commercial. But the way I kind of look at it, anyone who can do commercial, you can always, it's almost like stepping. I don't mean to be rude to guys who specialize in residential, but to me, it's a commercial, and you can always step back, and I can do any sort of residential from there and apply some of those skills you learn, whether it's different materials, but it's all applicable.
Yeah. What are some things that, like, what type of person do you need to be a really good plumber? Because unfortunately, we know a lot of contractors, not just in plumbing, that aren't that good. And I feel like, what is the standard for being a excellent plumber? Because honestly, I would put you in that category. And not just because I know you, it's because there's a lot of problem solving that we talk about, right? Just in my business, people come to us with a complicated problem, and you want to try and come up with a simple solution that's elegant. But is it just problem solving? Is it what do you need to become an excellent plumber?
That's a good question. I don't want to be insulting anyone. So I'm not trying to put people down, but it seems like in general in construction, because I think because there's no education required. You don't even need a high school education for most of it. So you can tend to get people that never put themselves forward before. So you'll have people that potentially didn't do good in high school, or didn't pay attention, maybe they got in trouble with the law. So like sometimes we get people in our industry that aren't the most sharp or brightest, and they work hard so that they can get into the industry, but there is a lot of knowledge that's needed. I kind of touched on it a little bit about, we do these you get these hours. It's easy to get hours, but then you have to take a test, and there's a certain amount of knowledge you have to have, and it's pretty extensive. And then for someone to be able to apply that takes a certain level of knowledge. I'm shocked how many times I'll get sent to a job and it'll be like, we sent out Bob and Bob couldn't figure it out, so you need to go out there and see what's going on. And I go out there and it's like, how can Bob not figure this out? Like, what is?
Can you give me an example?
What did he?
So I'm Bob. What did I do not well? You to have to come out. Give me some stories.
Like there's a leak, and they don't know where the leak's coming from, and it's like, well, there's only so many things that can be, and how hard. It's not that hard to like figure these things out, and maybe it's just I've been doing it a long time, so it seems more simple for me, but it'll just be small stuff, or they got frustrated, it was too hard, and I'll show up and be like, yeah, it's not easy, but it's not always going to be easy. You might be in a tight spot, or the crawl space isn't great, or, there might be some structural issues going on. And instead of panicking, they can't seem to figure out an alternative method of solving the problem. They can only, well, I was told to put the hose bib here. Well, why don't you have a talk with the homeowner and say, hey, this isn't going to work because of this. Can we move it to over here? Oh yeah, that would be great. Or, it's just,
okay.
Seems like pretty simple problem solving, but sometimes people just aren't great at it.
So, okay, I definitely want to expand on a couple of things. So leaks, that's a big one. I get calls about that. What do I do? Right? I'll share some stories and maybe you can walk me through. I've actually called. You'll remember when I tell you these stories because, I usually call you. So there's leaks, things that aren't exactly laid out perfectly. I'm kind of picking up with the whole hose bib story. So changing things on the fly, maybe. What are some other examples that maybe apprentice plumbers or lower experienced plumbers don't know how to deal with? Because I'm sure for every example, there's going to be somebody in the audience that might have like a story about that.
That's issues with apprentices. The list is long.
How many hours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Give me
a lot of with apprentices, it's usually more code-oriented issues that you'll run into, and they just don't. It's a lack of understanding, or they start to do something. You're like, I didn't tell you to do that. Why did you do that? And you're like, they don't know why they did it. They're like, well, you just told me to. I'm like, but why would I tell you to do that? Like, there's no thought into.
Sounds like my 8-year-old.
Yeah, it's like he's the journeyman's over there and he's painting the wall. I'm like, why are you painting the wall? I don't know. You told me to paint the wall. I'm like, we're plumbers. We're supposed to be plumbing. What are you doing over there? So it's just I'm making up that story. I'm just saying, for instance, it's just if you're doing something, you should at least think in your head, like, why am I okay, Cody told me to paint the wall over. Why am I painting the wall? There's no thought into that of questioning. And instead of hey, so I don't understand why you want me to paint the wall over here. They're just like, well, I'm going to do what Cody said because he told me to do it.
Yeah.
A very specific example is probably what you're looking for. And I gave you a generic.
It could be like what a journeyman does too. Because the way so it's apprentice, then journeyman at 4,000 hours, 8,000 hours, and the commercial, or that is commercial at 8,000. But even with journeyman plumbers, can you think of an example that you're like, how did this happen? Why did you do this?
So I can think of something that just happened a couple days ago, and I'm going to try to communicate it the best I can. But when you have plumbing, you want to have a clean out. So if there is a clog, you can snake it out later.
Yep.
So very recently, we had a residential journeyman caliber guy go to a house, and he needed to plumb in a washing machine box. So he wanted to put a clean out for snaking out if there's issues. Well, on a washing machine box, I don't know if you've hooked up a washing machine before, but you have the hose, and you stick it in a little pipe or the box.
Yes.
And then when the washing machine does its cycle, it pumps water out into that open hole in the top.
Yes.
Well, this guy put in a clean out for an end of line clean out. Well, he put it just below the hole where you dump in the washing machine.
Okay.
But if there's a clog and you want to clean it out, you would just move that hose out and you would just snake in the pipe, right? Does that make sense?
Now, I had to think about that for a second.
He put a clean out tee just below, and it's like, why would you, what purpose does this clean out? You know what I mean? How could this ever have any purpose? And then on top of it,
right.
On a washing machine, there's a thing called a P-trap, so it stops sewer smells from coming in the house.
Yes.
So now you would, in theory, be sending a snake down this pipe, and then through this little S-trap. You can't send a snake through those very well. And the P-traps don't clog because it's just washing machine discharge. So you're not getting toilet paper. It's not a toilet where you're flushing fecal matter and stuff in there. So it's just a moot point, and just the thinking of
Right. What did he say when you confronted him?
I
About
didn't confront. This was my brother Lucas was telling me. He's showing me pictures. He's like, "Look at what this guy did," and I'm like, "Why would you do that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't understand what he's doing. Like, there's a big hole right here. Why did he put a clean out right below the hole? There's a hole opening there. Like, if you need a clean out." So it ended up getting a guy came out and there, kind of changed a couple things and put a clean out on the other side of the trap. But it's just like
more down or further down to the
on the other, so where you have a standpipe or you have your P trap.
Yeah.
On the other side of the P trap, we just put a clean out. Okay. So that if you were to snake it out, you'd have no obstruction.
Just a straight shot.
Just a straight shot.
I get it.
But common sense, right? Like, once I explain it to you, if I showed you a picture, you may not think anything of it at first, but then I'd be like, well, if you had a machine where you needed to send a snake, you wouldn't pull this plug off. You would just send it down the open pipe.
I feel like common sense isn't that common.
Yes.
Unfortunately. Why do you think that is? Why do people not have common sense? And it's not just like, of course, realtors too. I'll point the finger this way. There's people that I deal with too that I have no idea why I don't want to. I have stories that if I tell that person would know exactly who it is, and I don't want to do that. But there's like,
oh, someone knows my story for sure. If they hear this, they know.
Okay, I'll give you an example.
There we go.
I will trade stories. So I have, we're doing a valuation on a house. What is it worth? Pretty easy. You draw a circle, and I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but you draw a circle, radius, look at the last 3, 6 months at the most, because past 6 months is a different market. And it's like, well, this house is worth, $800K. And I'm like, how did it get $800K? Because I got $650. And then he's like, yeah, he or she said this house. And then I look at this house and it's not even the same zip code, right? So it's like, okay, so that's how you're doing your comps. So it's like, why is common sense not common among contractors? Why do you think? Is it the lack of education? Is it
drugs?
Drugs? Okay. All right, next question. Yeah. I guess we'll move on. Is it just that, is it like, what do you think it is?
Now, I think there's a higher, well, I'm going to kind of jump. It's very similar, but when I was a kid and I was on job sites, I was told all the time, stay in school, figure out what this whole computer thing's about, go to college. Yeah. You don't want to be a construction worker.
Yeah.
So I just feel like, and that was a thing. Everybody was going to college. It was a big push. And so then you're left with the leftovers, and those guys all become construction workers. I think that's kind of changing now, where people are like, oh man, you can make good money being a plumber or an electrician. Yeah. So I think that's slowly starting to change, where you're getting a higher level. I've noticed in some of the apprentices, like, we're getting some smart kids, and it's like, okay, let's see if I can mold this kid from not just being smart, but to working hard also, which is kind of a little bit difficult.
Yeah, I'll add to that and say, and I don't want anybody to be offended, but I think common sense, there's different types of common sense. There's, and I'll use myself as an example, because I remember when we first met, I had like 0 to none mechanical common sense.
Yeah, I know this is going.
And knowledge. Yeah. I remember, the famous story between us where I was working on something on my car, and I was literally ready to like sell the car because I couldn't figure out how to take off this one bolt, right? And then you come over and there's a thing called a breaker bar that gives you all this leverage, and you're like, boop, and you just. So I think, and then when it comes to computers or contracts or medical or, handwork, I think there are different types of common sense. But I think a big part of that also is just how to critically think. Like my kid and I will talk about these things, and I really, he's 8, almost 9. He asks me a lot of questions, and I know he can answer it himself. So I'll just turn it back on him and be like, okay, so what do you think is the best solution? I want people to come with me with solutions instead of just like kind of vomiting, what's going on. But I think common sense also has to be taught, and I think it's something that maybe your dad, helped you inherit that somehow, or maybe it's just the way you are as a person. I don't know, but I think it's unfortunately kind of missing in a lot of contractors, and I have stories about contractors that did crazy things and I think part of it is you guys also work where people sometimes can't see, or the homeowner is there, but they're not in the crawl space or whatever it is. And then you get that one person who's maybe not as good as you or somebody else. And, now the plumbing waste has a belly, and it's not draining and you have to dig everything. I don't know what it is, but that's my thought. I do want to switch into the leaks. So the leaks is something that, so very, very common situation. Teach me what the thought process, if I called you, I have a leak, which is very common, especially in the wintertime, even now. What is the thought process on figuring out where a leak is coming from?
Great question. I love this question. Plumbers are expensive, so if I can talk people through fixing 90% of the problems, perfect. And so when you have a leak and it's plumbing related, well, it may or may not be plumbing related, but if you have water and it's constantly dripping, if it's constantly dripping, then it's going to tell you that it's some sort of a pressurized water line. Now, it could be a sprinkler system, or it could be a water line for water piping, depending on where this is, whether it's an apartment building or a house. So step one is determining if it's constantly leaking. If it's constantly leaking, it's probably a water line, because it means it's always under pressure. If it's intermittent, then it's either going to be drain or it's probably going to be a storm. And the reason why I say that is if it's raining outside and it starts leaking, then it's some sort of roof issue, or maybe water's falling a pipe, or maybe your gutter system goes inside the house, which is happens sometimes, the piping inside the house, and maybe it's leaking only when it's raining. Or if it's intermittent. So sometimes I ask people, like, is it leaking all the time? And they'll be like, no. And then I'll be like, does it seem to leak only when it rains? Have you noticed that? And they'll be like, I don't think it has anything to do with when it rains. And then that comes down to probably a sewer line. And the reason why it'd be a sewer line is it's not going to leak all the time. If it's a leak on, let's say, your kitchen line, well, it's only going to leak when you run your kitchen. So if you use the kitchen a little bit, or your dishwasher goes off, and then you notice a leak 5 minutes later, then you have an idea that's where the line might be. Where you might be able to use your toilet and you'll never have an issue, your lavatory you'll never have an issue, or your shower, or vice versa. Maybe it's only when you use your shower, or maybe it's only when you're taking a shower. So there's these different factors that come in, and the big key is the first step is it happening all the time? Yes, it's happening all the time, then it's some sort of water line. No, it's not happening all the time, then you start looking at possibly waste.
Right. Okay. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit, when I'm just thinking about the common things that we hear a lot from clients and friends about plumbers and in specific, why? Okay, so I'm a consumer. I called, 3 different plumbing companies for quotes for whatever. Could be a fixture. My toilet's cracked and it's leaking, whatever it might be. Can you help people understand why? Because when you call a plumber, automatically it's going to be a high upfront cost, right? I think I know why, but most people don't understand why is it so expensive to call a plumber for a simple issue, right? Can you kind of unpack that for us and educate us on why plumbers cost so much? Is it just the economy? Is it a specific reason? Like, what is the reason why?
So I'm going to be talking kind of in general on this. On my understanding, talking with my boss, the first hour. So sometimes we show up and it's a super easy fix. It might be a 15-minute job, a 30-minute job, or, an hour. Well, if you're there for 1 hour, well, typically, so there's a 1 hour minimum, and the first hour is typically a lot more expensive, and then every hour there it goes down significantly. So maybe the first hour is you have a $250 hour charge for the first hour, and then after that it drops to $160. I'm just throwing out numbers. I'm not sure exactly what it is. So the first hour is to kind of cover if it's a small job. It allows you got insurance on a vehicle. You got a shop. You might have these dispatchers. You might have there's people behind the scenes, basically, is what I'm saying on a lot of that stuff. The plumber himself isn't making $200 an hour. We're much less than that. But it's the overhead, is my understanding, for a lot of the calls like that, and then it drops down from there. Now, just in general, why plumbers tend to be, or construction workers in general, or plumbers are a little more expensive, and that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is there's quite a bit of training involved in what we do. And when I think about what is a plumber and our main goal as plumbers, and it's health and safety and keeping everything working as it should. And what I mean by that is plumbing is, sorry, I'm kind of getting a little lost in my own words. When I think of plumbing is about health and safety. Without plumbers, without plumbing, you have outhouses. You don't have clean water. It's not really thought of much anymore because it's pretty standard, but without clean water, without some place to direct your fecal matter, your shower water, your gray water, your storm systems, we're left with a mess. And a lot of the plumbing is like, well, I just want a sink here, or you're moving a sink. You're not really doing a whole lot as far as that goes. But there are stuff in plumbing that can directly affect one's health if not done properly. So there is a level of responsibility as a plumber when it comes to some things. Now, it just doesn't always apply, if that makes sense. But sometimes it's very, very important you have someone that is understanding the job at task and takes it seriously and doesn't cut a corner, because it can cause health risks or issues, or if they don't fix a leak properly and it sits there and leaks forever, now you got mold in your walls, and there's these health risks that can happen from that, or cross contamination.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I take my kids camping, is when you
Outhouse.
I mean, yeah, literally, like, sometimes we'll go glamping, right? Like car camping, but there's like a nice shop. But even then, it's not a warm, super clean experience like your house, should be. It's like you're reminded that as soon as you step out of this little bubble, it's not, like having plumbing is such a thing that you take for granted, to your point. But like not everybody has that. It's a privilege still, even today. Like some parts of the country, there's people that don't have plumbing, and especially outside the country, it's like a different, I've been to many different countries, and it's you definitely don't understand what you have until you don't have it. And then I was also looking at, so there's all these AI generative videos now, right? And one of the coolest things I've seen is where they'll take an older time, like in the 1600s or the 1800s, and they'll like AI generate the streets of New York or whatever, right? And, people don't know that horses just used to like poop in the street.
Yeah.
Right? Or like,
there wasn't cars everywhere.
Yeah. So like you're literally walking in fecal matter sometimes to cross a street. Or like if you go even further, like I just learned that like in certain palaces, like the Palace of Versailles in France, beautiful, like ornate, right? And they had no plumbing. So I think the channel is called like Weird History or something. And they're like, yeah, all they did was they just went into the corner and they just did their business or in a pot or whatever. Like I remember going to my grandma's house when I was a kid before she passed in Korea in the countryside. And I'm like, I need to pee. And she hands me I don't think I ever told you this, but she hands me a bowl, right? I'm like, what is this bowl? this is your toilet for number one. And I'm like, no, I got to go number two.
Oh, yeah, that's what my next question was going to be.
Yeah. And then she's like, go outside. I'm like, what? And then so there's this like hut, with the ground dug up, and there's like this one light, with the string, and you got to do a pop a squat, So I think it's really illuminating when you don't have something that you think is such it's almost a right, but it's actually a privilege. So I think that's something that I just wanted to add to your story. But okay, so I want to talk to you about some stories. All right. Okay. So I want to talk to you about some stories, good and bad. And then I also want to kind of finish it off with like more general questions about being a plumber. How to choose a plumber is actually what I've been thinking about also. Okay, so story time. All right, so tell me let's start with the good. So tell me like an awesome experience you had on a job or like a really, really cool project you worked on, or maybe it was like a really like big win for you somehow. I know you're so good that you have wins all the time, but is there like I did a really great job. My crew knocked it out of the park. Is there a story like that?
I wouldn't say there's nothing. We'll show up and, well, okay, I got one that's a little bit of a story where you're kind of, it's cool when you're a plumber. Sometimes when you show up as a plumber, a building doesn't have water and everybody hates you. Why don't we have water? You have tenants coming down, getting mad at you. And like, I just got here. I'm here to fix a problem. And then other times they're like, thank you. The plumber's here. How can you get us water? How quick can you get us? And then I pull some stuff out of my van and I get a problem solved and then everyone's super happy. So sometimes it's like good and bad and, but as far as a story goes, pretty recently, maybe in the last 6 months, we got a call to there's an apartment building above a commercial space. And what happened was someone broke into the commercial space, and I think it was a pizza joint. So these guys had been staking out this pizza joint, going there, eating their pizzas or whatever they might have been doing. And they're looking up and all the plumbing is exposed in the ceiling. Yeah. And what they're noticing is there's a bunch of copper waste lines. Oof. So they're looking up there, and they must have known what they were doing to a large extent because they knew that they could go in there, cut all this copper out, and no one's going to notice. People are going to be flushing and it's going to, dump on the floor or whatever, but they're going to get in there, cut all this copper waistline out and get out of there before they get in trouble. So they get in there, and I'm guessing it was probably a smart thief, and then he brought his buddy with him. So they go in there, and you could see that all this waste copper lines they were cutting it and stacking it by the door. And then I'm guessing the buddy that he brought with him didn't know that much saw a copper line and went to go cut it. Well, that was a water line. So it went from just like cutting out these empty pipes, because it's also nighttime, so you're not going to have people using the bathroom as much. So if you have water splashing around, it's not going to be nearly as much. Well, you hit a water line, you have 80 PSI behind that, and it, it's an 1.5 inch line. So it starts flooding out and spraying these guys, from what we can tell, because they left in a panic. Because all the copper got left. I believe there was a Sawzall left on the ground. Like they were cutting, hit a major water line and panicked and got out of there. It ended up tripping an alarm somehow, maybe when they left or maybe when the water was spraying. So the cops end up showing up. So we show up in the in the morning we get a call. Hey, Cody, first thing, we need to go out. There's some emergency. This building doesn't have water, and we show up. And then I start noticing like, oh, what these guys were doing. They're in there cutting out all the waste lines.
Okay.
And then they hit one water line.
Yeah.
So we make a patch on the water line, and then we end up fixing all the waste lines, replaced them with PVC, got them going. But it was interesting because there was police there. They want to take pictures of all the copper pipe. There was a good 2 inches of water still on the ground because there was nowhere for it to drain. It was a basement level. So they had a company out there working on sucking all the water out. We put our boots on. We're stomping around, flashing our flashlight there and trying to figure out what needed to be done. So we got the water on. We got the waste hooked up. And everyone was happy. It was fun to kind of talk with the police officers and, hey, what have you guys seen recently? And they're like, oh, this is kind of crazy. So we're kind of swapping stories with the officer. But that'd be an example of everything like working out good and a happy ending.
Okay. Okay. So I want to piggyback on that. And, sorry, every time you say something, I'm like reminded of something else. So this is something I'm dealing with right now.
Yes.
Okay. With your brother, actually. And it reminds me that people don't really understand or know how to think about lines, plumbing lines behind walls on older homes. So maybe you know kind of where I'm going with this, but there's different types of plumbing that I've learned. There's different feed lines that bring the water in. There's different types of waste lines that take the stuff out, right? There are different shapes and sizes and materials. But often what a buyer in my world worries about are old piping inside the walls. Sometimes we have to waive an inspection. That's not quite the story right now because it's sort of a buyer's market. But sometimes you just have to make a decision because you can't cut out everything. Right? If you were advising me and I know nothing and I just came to you and said, hey, I like this really old 1920s house or 1940s or even 60s, right? 70s. What's some general things that people should know and understand about older plumbing and maybe cover some of the materials and the pros and cons and how you would advise somebody like that?
Okay.
Just a few minutes on that topic.
You're probably going to have to refresh on where you want to direct me on this. But in general, when it comes to water systems, we're trying to steer away from anything galvanized in your walls. It's a matter of time. It springs a leak. Having said that, we're not Superman. We can't look through the wall. And even if we can see the pipe in the wall, you don't know how thick that pipe is, how much it's corroded away. So it's really unpredictable to a large extent, but galvanized piping, we try to keep away from it in general. Copper's better because copper in general came after galvanized. So if you have copper, you have an idea that around how old it is. If I were to go in a house and I don't really know what's in the walls, what I would probably start with would be on faucets. On the very end of them, there's a thing called the aerator, and it just unscrews. And there's a little screen in there. In galvanized houses especially, if you were to pop one of those screens, it's going to be packed with junk. And you can take that little aerator and you dump it out on the counter and you'll see what's in there.
This is great.
Now, it doesn't necessarily...
keep going.
It doesn't mean your water system's bad. Some of the stuff can be stuff from the hot water tank. Maybe your hot water tank's starting to go bad. There's a liner in those, and maybe it's pieces are starting to flake out and that's filling it up. But that kind of gives you an indicator that your screens are catching stuff, and it will always catch stuff. But it's kind of an indicator that maybe there's something going on with the water system. It's not a bulletproof plan, but you'd go around to each faucet, check it. The ultimate, in my opinion, if you're going to do that, would be to clean all those screens off and then put it back on and then come back in a week and then check it again. And that might give you an idea of we're getting a lot of sediment here. And maybe the house is on a well or something like that would cause that. Or maybe you might look in your hot water tank. Maybe the hot water tank's starting to get old. Maybe it's maybe there's the material, the liner in there starting to flake away and you're getting corrosion, or maybe it tells you that the water pipes might be a little older. Maybe you got galvanized pipe in line, or maybe you have a new water lines all throughout the house, but your water service is galvanized. But an aerator would kind of give you a little sneak peek into that, if that makes sense.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
You like that little tip?
I like that. Yeah, it's just a light
I don't think
bulb.
I've told you that one before.
We talked about it,
We
but
talked
not
about
in
cleaning
that way.
out, but not in
That's
that
a
way.
great tip.
But it's like an indicator.
You just see me unscrew a little. I was like, what are you doing? Let me tell you something. But that's a great tip. Okay, so galvanized. Okay, then how do you know if a water heater is going bad?
The easiest way
Yeah,
is when you got water all over your floor.
that's happened to me before. Yeah.
That's 99.9% of our calls
Really?
on
Okay.
hot water tanks is there's water over the floor. Nobody, including myself, preemptively goes, my hot water tank's getting old. We should
Right.
just replace it.
Right.
I got a few extra grand and I would
Right,
love
right.
to, doesn't happen, never happens.
Okay, so
Okay. They start leaking, or I'm running out of water really quick. So then we get called out to those sometimes. Not so much me anymore. I've kind of rised in the rankings, you might say, and I do more bigger jobs than that. But as our company, we get calls about we're not getting hot water. And there's steps of testing a hot water tank, and you can make repairs.
Oh, interesting. So the way I understand it is there's a tank that, like, there's a metal tank, right? And there's insulation around it, like the stuff you see, that's the round thing, that's the insulation. And there's like a heating element inside the tank that warms up the water, makes it hot. Is that kind of, or there's a burner, I guess, if it's gas.
If it's gas, exactly.
Or electric you heat the water somehow. So you're saying
you could be my apprentice. You've come a long way.
I've done enough plumbing to know that I don't want to be a plumber. we did a flip. Cody helped me with a flip. It was a 1903 turn of the century home in Cedar Woolley. I actually had a really bad experience with a plumber. True story. I get this, not to get sidetracked, but I get this plumber recommended from my boss at this because I used to do foreclosures. I used to drive around, do auctions, and Lori says, this is the guy. Oh, great. I hired the plumber, pay him $3,000 for the first half, I think, to replumb maybe 4 fixtures and add a toilet, right? I'll pay you the other half. And he's like, oh, I'm done with the first, phase. I get there and there's a new toilet. There's a new, sink. And then we go under the crawl space and it's literally not even connected to anything. If you remember,
I remember you calling me like, hey, I can't get a hold of this plumber. I need you to help me set some, I think it was tubs or something like that. And I came out there with you and I look where the tub hole is and I'm like, I don't see anything there. So then I'm like, I don't see anything here. Where's the...
And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's a trusted plumber that I called and gave money to. Another hot tip, schedule, if you're having a big job, make sure you withhold payment until you can see. I mean, there's a deposit for materials oftentimes, but anyway, so Cody said, I'm like, what are you talking? And then we go in the crawl space.
Yeah. Nothing.
And I'm crawling through and we were finding... 100-year-old nails. I'm like stuck. We found this, remember we found that Pepsi can from the 50s or something? And I was like, this is kind of cool, but not really. But the reason why, I bring that up is because so going back to the hot water. So if you have a hot water tank failure, it's 99.9% the fact that the tank cracks and has a leak. Is it the expansion contraction thing? Like, what causes a tank to leak?
So to the best of my understanding, you got a steel tank and it has a liner in it, and that liner will where will wear away over time.
Okay.
And
Is
once
it like a plastic liner or what?
some sort of plastic liner is my understanding.
Okay.
It might be something, a little more scientific than that as far as the terminology
Sure.
of plastic liner.
Yeah, some liner.
But it's got some sort of a coating to it so that it doesn't rust rust. So then once that wears away, then you have water wearing away at it, or, depending on how the water circulates through there, it starts to wear out, and then you start get, water on metal, and it starts to rust or corrode, and then it tends to crack, or maybe it's like what you're talking about. There's a lot of expansion and contractions, which most hot water tanks have expansion tanks on them to kind of help take the pressure. But these tanks are always under pressure, and over time they will eventually start to leak or crack. Now going back on gas hot water tanks, basically you have heater on the bottom, so you have flames heating up the water, and it's a pot on a stove essentially, and it heats up the water that way. And you got these sensors, and it tells the flame to turn off, turn on, turn off, and that's how those ones operate. The electric ones, like what you said, they have these heating elements in there, and what those look like are kind of the old school electric stoves. And you have how the stoves have the little swirl, the metal swirls.
Oh, right. Oh, man.
It's just like that, except it's like a loop usually. Sometimes it does a little swirly thing, but you have these probes that go in there, and there's usually two, one up high, one down low. And then you have these controllers on the hot water tank that'll say heat both of them, or just heat the lower element, heat the upper element. So one of them can go bad. So instead of getting your normal 10, 15 minutes of hot water, you get in 5 minutes of hot water.
Right.
So it could be something as simple as changing one of the elements out. Okay. But in general, when it gets to that point where the elements are going out, a lot of times my hot water tank's not working well. They look at their tank and they go, oh, it's 15 years old. Let's get a new hot water tank. In some applications, you could just service it.
Right. Okay.
But that's where it comes into play. Like, well, do you want to service this 10-year-old tank or 15-year-old tank and pay a plumber, however many hours to diagnose which element it is, get the proper element, and then swap it in, or just install a new hot water tank? Because then it's like, well, for another $1,000, I could have just got a hot water tank installed. So that's where it gets kind of interesting on what you want to do.
Okay. Okay, so let's go into some horror stories. All right, so
that's right. That's what we were talking about. Stories.
Yeah, tell us a juicy horror story that you've dealt with. Yeah, because we love stories.
Okay.
Yeah, give me a bad day.
So that's okay. That's a good. Now, most days, especially as a commercial journeyman plumber, my days are usually very easy. I'm not getting filthy. I'm not getting really dirty. Generally, life is good. But as a plumber, when you have a bad day, it's a very bad day. You can't have much of a worse job as a plumber when you're having a bad day. It's very bad, generally.
I'm scared already.
So having said that, I have a few different stories.
All right. Yeah, give me a couple.
So a recent one in the last few months was we got a call first thing in the morning. We got this emergency, and we get called out to this big commercial building. It's an apartment building above. You got a restaurant. You got a hair salon. And we're out to this hair salon, and what has happened now that they've opened walls, and we show up, and what happened was they had this big dead space in this wall. It's like 12 inches. So essentially it had like a big wall, a 12-inch wall, and there was this sewer main coming from the whole building running through this dead space in this wall. And what happened was there was these pumps that were operating, turning on and off, and it put a wear point in this cast iron pipe, and eventually it just gave way and busted like a 3-inch hole at the bottom of the sewer line. So because it's in this wall and it's sealed off and it's just like a dead space, this I don't know, 80 to 100 foot long wall, which was a 12-inch deep, just started to fill up slowly. So like an inch times 100 feet long, 12 inch, like it's a lot of volume. Well, it's more than 1 inch. It starts filling up.
12 inches? Like
Yeah, it's a 12-inch
diameter?
deep wall.
Oh, the
The wall depth
Okay,
is about, 12 inches wide. But that wall runs about 100 feet. And the sewer line is running all the way down there. It picks up this restaurant, the toilet from the apartment above. It picks up some stuff from the hair salon. So you got toilets, you got kitchens, you got showers, you got all sorts of stuff flushing in this. And you got this hole in this wall, and it starts slowly filling up this 12-inch wall. And and this is the immediate space next to this is this hair salon. So as this sewer line starts to fill up somewhere around the 1 foot to 2 foot mark, it's starting to seep through the wall. Like they're getting this moisture and it's starting to smell. And this is,
Oh my God.
you got these ladies getting their hair done.
That is wow.
And
Okay.
eventually what happened is, so they're noticing and they're like, what's going on? And they're getting this moisture and this smell. Well, overnight, the sheetrock just gave way and it busted out in this 100-foot long space with this 12-inch deep wall, just sent sewer everywhere. So these ladies show up to come to work in the morning to fulfill their appointments.
Oh
and
my God.
there was that space, once it came out and went everywhere, it wasn't nearly as much, but you're talking about 3 inches of just like sewage everywhere. And they're coming down these stairs and they see all this. And I didn't get to talk to them directly. Did they notice it? Did they turn on the light? Did they step down there and then notice? That I don't have the 100%. So they're calling a bunch of people, and a company comes out, vacuums most of it out, a big suction vac, and they're vacuuming it out. And we show up, and it's just, it's all crusty, and we get our rubber boots, and we're just stepping on these crusty, toilet paper, corn, just everything you could imagine that's left over that's not liquid. So it's like take your sewer line and take all the water out of it. So that's what we were like walking into.
Oh my
and
God.
it smells, the everything's just destroyed. You see all these, hair salon chairs. It was just a disgusting, nasty, and we had to find where the leak was. But meanwhile, like they'd shut the water off, but there were still, tenants above. So they had to like talk to them and shut things down. But that was kind of a recent, like nasty, juicy story.
I will pay you whatever you want. Charge me anything you want. It's crazy. That's a bad day. That's a bad day. That's crazy. I remember when I was, you helped me reset a toilet,
Over the phone.
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
talking
Or
about?
FaceTime or whatever
Yeah.
it was. Yeah. We've been through, I've asked you a million questions about, and then I remember, I didn't realize that the toilet has its own like P-trap. So I'm like suctioning the heck out of this, or plunging the heck out of this thing to try and like push all the nasty there was, it was clean water, but is it really clean? So I'm plunging, and I take the two bolts off to, lift up the toilet because I had to replace a wax ring.
I know where this is going.
And I remember, and I'm like, oh, and I'm carrying this thing, and then I hear a little splish splash.
Splish splash.
And I look down on my foot, and it's like right on my foot.
on
And
your
I
foot.
freaked out. I got all the Clorox wipes. I was like, it's my own toilet, right? But I can't even imagine walking into that situation with the hair salon as an owner, as a client, as a plumber. It's like, that's such a crazy story. Okay, so is there another one you want to share quickly, or
I can do as many as you want.
give us a quick one? Give us a quick one.
Quick
Another bad day at the office.
Injuries. You want to go injuries?
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Okay. I've been sent out to jobs like, hey, so our drills used to all be like not battery powered, electric, like you plug them in.
Corded.
Now everything's cordless.
Yeah.
Well, they had the amount of power in some of those drills is unbelievable on some of them. And they had different versions that didn't have clutches. So when the bit would bind, you'd have to like hang on. It would take a lot of strength. I remember as a kid, like being tossed around by these drills and getting slammed. And so I've been sent out to jobs. Hey, Cody, I'm going to go with Bob as a generic name. I don't want to mention people's name. The drill got caught in his glove. It tore up his fingers. We needed to go out there. The water shut off, and we got to get this guy to the hospital. And, can you figure it out? And I remember showing up because I was just an apprentice at the time, and there was blood everywhere. And I was like, what the heck? Like, it was like I was walking into a crime scene. And so I'm having to like clean up some of this blood because it's along the outside of this house, and the guy was drilling a hose bib out, and it binded on him, and his glove caught into it, and it got his fingers and like, tore him up pretty good. So I remember kind of showing up to that, and that was kind of wild, a little bloody. I've had my own cuts on jobs that were pretty bad, having to get stitches and stuff. But that's a little short story as far as a little bit of blood goes.
And I'm sure you have a lot more.
Yeah, I got more.
I want to close this off by maybe asking a couple of things. Do you
ask your questions in the comment section, and I'll send some more
please.
stories.
I'm sure.
Do you have a story about water?
Yeah, we'll do another part 2.
Yeah,
just story time. Okay, so are there some good general tips for people who own homes, like a lot of our viewers? Can you share 2 or 3 tips for homeowners in general to keep their plumbing in great shape?
Well, you know what they say about a plumber is his plumbing is probably worse than everyone else's, and you know what they say about an electrician,
or doctors,
yeah, exactly. So I'm not really the right person to be saying this because I don't do any of this, but you should have your hot water tanks flushed. You get a lot of sediment at the bottom of your tanks over time.
Okay.
Kind of like what you get like I was saying about the aerators on your faucets. Mm-hmm. You will get stuff at the bottom of your tank, so it's good to flush them out every year is what you're supposed to do. Especially on your on-demand systems. I have an on-demand on my house, and I'm supposed to flush it out. You can even run some chemicals through there, and it's supposed to help improve the longevity of it. That's good practice.
Okay. Never done it before, but I will.
Never done it before either.
Probably call you. Okay.
I talked one of your clients through doing some of this stuff.
Yes.
There's a lot of screens, like on faucets, that can be cleaned. Same thing goes for a lot of the on-demand hot water tank setup. There's screens. Some houses have filters, which should obviously be serviced and maintained.
Okay. Yeah, I've never even thought about flushing out my hot water tank. I mean, I guess anything floating around in there that's not water, it could damage the lining, or it could eat away at something, or corrode something. Okay. So we'll kind of wrap it up with if you were hiring. So I do this all the time, where I go to another market or a state, and I have to look for another me, or at least 80 to 90% of me, right? Or even better. How would you interview a plumber to find the best plumber in your area? Maybe there's somebody in Spokane that can't just call you, right? How do they look for, are there 2 or 3 tips that do this when looking for the best plumber?
That's a really tough question for me to answer. I don't hire plumbers, but I think it's the same thing as everything. You're going to try to find someone that's honest, and that can be really, really tough to tell. I think honesty, having a certain level of moral integrity is very important. because there's opportunities. I don't remember what the news shows were where we're gonna pretend like the hot water tank's bad, and they loosened a nut on there and they wanted to test people.
Yeah.
Fantastic, because the reality is there's people there that just are gonna sell you and talk to you. So it's very tough, because I would be really wary of someone that comes across as a salesman, because you don't want to be upsold a bunch of stuff that you don't need. You want someone that's going to be more direct and honest. As a plumber, when I show up on a job site, I feel like I can talk to the homeowner like, hey, I'm here to help you out. What do you need done? And I'll give them the best advice. Well, if this was my house, this is what I would do. If you're tight on money, this is what I can do. Or, will this work or that work? And I can give them different solutions. But how to find someone that's going to be honest, I think that's the $1 million question.
Yeah, that's why we have what we call our home support vendors, is people that we've either gotten. I mean, the highest level is we've hired them personally. Whether it's for our own projects, our own families, friends, or clients. And then the second tier for us would be some sort of a very hot referral. Like, I absolutely trust, doesn't mean they're guaranteed, right? Even we can have a bad day also, right? But it's like, that's like the next level down is I have a not even warm, but a hot referral, like, use this guy for this job. And I think the other thing that really, the tip I would have is try to know specifically what needs to be done, because then you're going to find that specific person who's really good at that. And if you don't know, you got to figure out a way to kind of have a framework about how to think about a remodel or, this, that, or the other. But yeah, trust for us is the most important thing. And that's what we'll only recommend a few different people. And then outside of that, that's really up to you. Maybe you want to save some costs, but then there's additional costs of having to do the job twice, for example, which I've been through, So look for someone trustworthy, maybe somebody who can offer solutions, like different ways of, solving the problem, whether on a budget or time constraint or whatever it is, design constraint, I guess. Is there one more thing you want to add there?
Well, along the same line, Mike, I'm kind of curious, because I try to put a professional to look professional, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be honest necessarily. I know guys that don't necessarily dress, they look like a laborer, let's say, but they're great. They're perfectly suitable, great plumbers. When you had that run-in with the guy that, I'm done, pay me out, and then I show up and nothing's done in the crawl space, I'm kind of curious, did he have a look to him? Was it, or what was the indicator to you that in hindsight was a red flag? Like, oh, I should have, when this guy said X, Y, and Z, was there any red flags in your opinion on that example?
I don't remember getting a sense with him that something is off, because the way he would talk to me, the way he would carry himself. I mean, he wasn't driving around in like a super fancy car, but not a lot of contractors do. Yeah. Right?
And it might be a red flag when they show up on a Porsche 911. You'd be like, what's going on here?
Yeah. It's $1,000 an hour, to fix a fixture.
Now, I could weed out a plumber myself, but for me to tell, just someone listening to this,
because you would know what to ask specifically.
Exactly.
Right.
I remember at another company, like, I was going to hire my own helper because my boss was hiring these guys that were just terrible.
Yeah.
So I set up a little testing station. And when they were going to hire someone, they would bring them out to me. Okay. And I would set up these different pipes. And I wanted them to use a square. I wanted them to hold a level and show me what is level, what is grade, what is... I had this little testing area for them.
Can you design that for us? Because we'd be like, okay, first of all, you got to pass this test. That makes total sense. But I guess for most people, it would just be reputation and who you got referred from. And if you trust that person to be critical, it is a very tough one. That's what we ask everybody who knows an excellent contractor to tell us. Because, let's not be secret about it. Let's actually, refer people and make sure they have good experiences.
Yeah, I think referrals is a great. Other than that, it didn't work out so well that one time for you. Word of mouth is great.
I mean, not everything's going to be a home run.
That's true.
Okay, so we'll end with this. What is next for you in terms of your plumbing journey, career, whatever you call it? And where do you think plumbing is going from here on? What does the future look like?
I hear a lot of times there's a shortage, and that's one thing in plumbing that I feel is true, but not true at the same time. I know plumbers that are laid off right now. So I hear there's a shortage. I don't know if I fully buy into that, but I do see a high level, competent level plumber is a little bit of a shortage. Now, as far as I'm going, I'm working on branching out on my own. Me and my brother started our own plumbing company, and it is super fresh. Not the name, but we're very new into it. It's Ibex Plumbing. I have an email, cody@ibexplumbing.com, if you want to reach out to me. And we're trying to make it on our own. And it's big, it's intimidating, and very scary. But I'm tired of working for someone else, and I'm trying to look out for my family and our future. And hopefully I can make things work.
I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much. I'm sure we could talk for 10 more hours. And I do realize every time I talk to you, I learn something. And that's what I try to emulate when I have clients talk to me, is I want them to leave with something that they can take for themselves. And I think education is a big part of it. And I see you doing that with people, with me, explaining to people that, this is how it works. Like, this is the reason why I would recommend the solution is because of this reason. And I think people really appreciate that, especially in this age where information is everywhere, but wisdom isn't, right? So reach out to Cody or his brother, or reach out to us if you have any questions about them. But yeah, thank you for joining us, guys. We appreciate you being with us. If you have any questions about plumbing, or you want us to cover something else, or you want to be in touch with Cody and his team, please let us know. Please help us with the algorithm by liking, subscribing, commenting. We love to see feedback from you guys, and hopefully we will do more episodes with Cody and other qualified contractors. So thank you.